Yo, what's up guys, and welcome back to another video. In today's video, we're going to be comparing villains from Has-Been Hotel and Murder Drones, and attempting to analyze what makes both respectively terrifying, and well, what made them work as villains. In addition, I'm also joined by someone who you may recognize, Yagster!
Why hello there, Fern! It is an absolute honor just being here on your channel and doing this amazing collab with you. As someone who's just seen all of Has-Been pretty recently, I certainly have thoughts on certain aspects.
Shut up, you know that I love you.
But regardless of that though, one thing that I'm gonna say is thoroughly impressed me has been a certain TV head. Or, I guess, iPad now? Yeah, I really like Vox, and as it just so happens, I also really like Murder Drones.
So the two of us came together and decided to compare two of the main antagonists.
Seeing as how MD only really has Sin and Vox literally carried the entire season on his back, it only felt right to compare those two specifically.
Vox and Sin actually have a lot more in common than you may think. Both in their own respective series are in a weakened state right now, Vox only having his head and Sin being limited to Uzi's tail. Both were world-ending threats, and both even have three-letter names. I'm gonna be introducing Has-Been and Vox, and Yag's gonna be doing Murder Drones and Sin. And then we're gonna come together and compare the characters and their writing.
Without further ado, let's get started!
Before Vox became an overlord in hell, he was a weatherman in the real world. However, his yearn for the spotlight and his god complex led him down a path of blood and murder, taking down the leads of news channels, producers, and eventually the head of the channel. But upon reaching his ultimate goal, he was met with an untimely fate. He then arrived in hell for obvious reasons, and while we don't know too much of his backstory per his arrival in hell, we do know he met Alistair and the two were friends for a while.
Oh, you're serious?
This essentially was Vox's breaking point, being rejected for simply wanting to have a partnership. He then got his shit rocked, at least according to Al, and with this loss went on to perform multiple deals with people like Baxter and Katie Killjoy, before ultimately forming the V's. And with Alistair out of the picture, he had Hell's media and attention wrapped around his finger. He was nearly unstoppable, until Al returned in 7 years, and this shook Vox to the point that he went on a musical tangent that resulted in him getting his ass whooped again before having all of Hell's power block out. He then decided to spy on the hotel through Serpentius, but when that didn't work, he went on to hypnotize Angel Dust to gain complete knowledge and information on the hotel's every single move. And after the main cast managed to fight back that year's extermination, he decided to step in the ring and use the hotel's reputation as a slingshot for his own personal gain. And using Charlie's desperate attempts to clean her slate that he had dirtied through his personal methods and manipulative tactics, to make her seem more and more like an aggressive dictator, it seemed like nothing could stand in his way.
I know you're watching. Come on out. No need to be shy, Vox.
If there's one thing that Vox has that absolutely blinds him from his original goal, it's Alistair, especially when it came to the final stage of his plan. With just under 24 hours left, he ruined his entire reputation by wiping out a ton of buildings while trying to destroy Alistair, and he didn't care a bit. All he wanted in that moment was to kill the radio demon, to wipe the grin right off his face, even if it meant taking his own life. And the rest of the V's in the process. Oh yeah, the V's.
Anyone else got shit to say? I'm from fucking Florida!
Vox's relationship with the V's is what I would describe as both incredibly toxic and for some reason has the potential to rival other relationships in the show. Even when they were in the face of death because of Vox, Velvet and Valentino still took his side despite him going completely haywire and basically almost killing them. Vox and Val are colleagues. It's been hinted that they're more than that, but for now, until Vox outwardly admits to them being partners, they fit into the friends with benefits category. As for Vox and Velvet, this season really demonstrated how much Velvet likes to spend time with him and the dynamic between the two, but it also showed how much she tolerates him. Like, she was fully aware that he was being an asshole to the both of them, and yet she still let him go through with his plan. But they both also agreed that they'll take him in and hopefully see what he missed. And they are an incredible team. More than one would think, especially in combat, even taking down Alistair, who at the time was the strongest overlord in hell. He was in a weakened state, but still. These three have demonstrated that they are one of the most powerful, influential, and controlling trio in hell.
The last thing I want to do is spread misinformation.
Vox sees the main cast as merely a stepping stone or a tool to achieve his final goal. And this is the case for a lot of the characters, using their influence, power, or whatever makes them for his own personal gain. In the case of Carmilla Carmine, her weapons, with Charlie using her hotel as a spin for taking over heaven, with Lucifer he used the fear he spread across the crowd and turned it to his favor, while also copying his song, which he does repeatedly during the season. All this reliance on others, and not doing much by his own hand, eventually it caught up to him. So Vox's fate is currently unknown. He's currently been turned into an iPad by Val, Val, but he's still alive. It is a wonder if he's going to get a new body or if he's just going to be headless for a while, which honestly would be funny to see. But this is where Vox is currently. Worth noting that the creator Viv did mention that he will consistently be an important character in the future of the series, though.
Sin was originally a normal worker drone just like the rest of her respective castmates. Unfortunately for her though, she was deemed too incompetent to follow simple orders and was thus discarded. Shortly after that, she awoke in a junker with an Eldritch virus inside of her. And from that moment on, the original Sin as we knew it was never going to be seen again. This essentially means that she would be nothing more than a vessel for the Solver to do whatever it wanted, whenever it wanted. Which is pretty fucked up. Shortly after that, she would then kill her original owners and then blow up all of Earth on a whim. She would then also kill her fellow worker drones and mutate them into a new different type of drone, known as a disassembly drone. She would then send said disassembly drones onto an exoplanet called Copper 9 and exterminate any absolute Solver drones that were not loyal to her. Oh yeah, she's also pretending to be a human named Tessa, cause she skinned her alive and is kind of currently wearing her skin as a Halloween costume. Sin is just one hell of a good cosplayer, you gotta give that to her. After a disassembly drone named N decapitates Tessa, quote unquote, the hoax is done and then Sin reveals herself. Sin's main relationships lie with her disassembly drones, Tessa, and the main protagonist, Uzi. The most prominent and dominant relationship of the bunch is of course Tessa, cause they're literally pretty close together. Not in a good way though. It's very evident based on her appearance and how she is, kind of wearing her skin right now that Sin is very obsessed with Tessa. Whilst Tessa herself didn't really interact with her that much on screen, we can infer that she valued Sin the least compared to the rest of the worker drones, and she namely valued N the most. Speaking of which, Sin's relationship with N is also pretty interesting. Sin outright calls her big brother, which clearly establishes a sibling dynamic between them. Beyond that one throwaway line though, they don't really have much else going on for them. N spends most of his time around Uzi, and Sin spends most of her time cosplaying. Sin's relationship with Uzi is pretty short and linear. Uzi's the pro tag, and Sin is the end tag, and they both want to kill each other, which pretty much describes their entire relationship as a whole. Now moving on to something with a bit more depth and nuance, we have Sin's relationships with both V and J. Now, the reason why I'm doing both of them at the same time is relatively simple. They're both victims of Sin's manipulation and gaslighting. Jay was manipulated by Sin due to her having zero control over the situation. Since Sin was Jay's administrator, she literally had no choice but to obey and listen to her every command, despite the fact that she is clearly pretty scared and does not want to obey her whatsoever. She's only here out of fear and obligation, not because she wants to be. And keep that whole control part in mind for later, cause it'll be pretty important. Lastly, we have Sin's relationship with V. This one mirrors her relationship with Jay, except they have drastically different endings. Jay was never able to escape Sin's control, but V was. V has a very meaningful connection to both N and Uzi, even going so far as to sacrifice herself for her friends. This is in stark contrast to Jay, who never even had the opportunity to make those meaningful connections thanks to Sin controlling her at every turn. And last but certainly not least, we have Sin's fate. Sin is ultimately defeated by the main trio in episode 8, but she isn't outright killed. Uzi eats the singularity, which is pretty much where Sin gets all her power from, and without that singularity, Sin pulls a Wicked Witch of the West. The real Sin technically dies in this moment, but the remnants of the Solver live on. Due to having consumed the singularity though, Uzi fuses herself with the Solver and, Sin is now inside of her tail, which is pretty interesting, but she's in a weakened state and she's also rage baiting. Sin is just kind of built different.
Now with both characters introduced and backstories established, let's get into the comparison. It's no mystery that Vox as a character relies a lot on others. Whether it's him outright stealing their brand, like Lilith, or coming up with ways to spin ideas that already existed, aka Charlie's Hotel, he uses these and highlights them in a way that is most impressive. There are so many cases of him doing this, with Alistair even mentioning that he would be nothing without the V's, which he's a hypocrite for saying because he's on Rosie's leash, but I concur. And episode 4's battle really proved this, with him barely managing to put Alistair down in a 3v1 while he was in a weakened state. It's not just power and ideas he copies either. When Sarah revealed her true angelic form, Vox took this form and ended up using screens and wires to replicate her form with Shockwave as backup to copy Sarah's Ring of Light. Oh yeah, I mentioned this earlier, but he also copies people's songs note for note.
You're in my zoo, don't you forget.
I said how you look so small, don't you forget. Be the motherfucking king of hell.
But going back to his reliance on others' ideas, his plan on becoming a god honestly might not have worked if Charlie's hotel didn't exist, because it's like he said in episode 1, using the hotel's reputation to spin towards his own personal goal of taking over heaven and becoming a god, not his own personal reputation, the hotel's. And when Charlie or the angels fight back, he's able to spin their accusations and apologies to his own cause.
For apologizing for genocide with gift baskets?
Oh, I'm definitely talking more on this later. The overall background of his character was also explored a lot during this season. I don't know the exact numbers of how much screen time he got compared to the other characters, but I'd be willing to bet he was at least in the top 3, if not top 2 this season. We got a lot of information, whether it was his motivation, his tactics, and backstory, and when the premiere of the second season started up until the end of episode 6, I almost was kind of relating to him and wanting to root for him. Heaven and the main cast, and by the main cast I mean Charlie this season, were incredibly dumb.
Yeah, I'm just not sure reaching out to the overlords trying to make you look like a horrible monster is the best idea.
Baggy, it's a big story. I bet VoxTech will change their tune when they hear it.
Okay, no, I'm not about to start ranting about that. But it felt like the main cast at times were actively handing Vox exactly what he needed. Whether it was Emily arriving to apologize for genocide with gift baskets, or Charlie literally inviting VoxTech over for an interview, the same company that wanted to ruin her image, and Vox insistently would take these easy layups and slam dunk them. But notice how I said up until episode 6? Well, that's because in that episode we learn a lot about what kind of person he really is and what he really wants from all of this. Okay, I'm not even going to play the clip, but for anyone who's seen Has Been, I'm going to sum it up in 2 words. Angel dust. Bro was actively controlling Angel to know every single play that the hotel made, and to top it off, it's implied that he has physically abused Angel Dust multiple times. They were playing checkers and Bro was playing 3D chess, and this is what shattered the illusion of what Vox as a character actually was. He's no martyr or figure who wants to take over heaven for the people of hell. No, he's the manipulative strategist who uses his power from others and his own personal gain. And man, I want to punch him so bad for the shit he did for Angel. I respect his writing and how he was handled in season 2, but man, this episode also highlighted how Vox was slowly beginning to care less and less about the V's, and his hunger for power of being a god was only growing stronger. And also Alistair, who had willingly let himself be captured, wasn't exactly helping the situation.
Are you sure you want to present yourself like this?
Overall, Vox's back is broken this season from carrying a very large portion of the plot and story. But now, I'm gonna hand it over to Yag.
Writing-wise, Sin is pretty linear and straightforward. Unlike Vox, there isn't nearly as much depth and nuance as there is for Sin. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Sin is a force of nature who serves more as a world-ending threat than as a character we're supposed to understand and occasionally sympathize with. She forces the cast to act and to move the plot along. Without her, the cast would never be able to fully defeat the Solver, and therefore, they would never be able to unite and fight together. Regarding the setup of her character, she doesn't really have too much in that department either. She's formally introduced to us in episode 2 in a brief flashback, but she's only really important after episode 5.
Seems Jay forgot to let me out of my basement time out again.
Yet, here you are.
Annoyed expression.
In the case with Vox, he is also a control freak. One angle to this direction of him is when he controlled Angel Dust with it, even leaving the question of was any choice Angel Dust made their own, or was it all Vox? Because as revealed in Season 2, Episode 6, Vox has been using Angel Dust as a pawn to spy on the hotel to know every single move, as I mentioned earlier. And then once he had fulfilled that position, he then went on to control him again to use Angel Dust's influence to create more supposed evidence that his, emphasis on his, vision was better in every possible way compared to Charlie's redemption. And it's not just Angel Dust he does to this too. There are multiple times in the series where it is shown he can use his influence as a TV demon to hypnotize the sinners of hell. It is worth noting that this doesn't work on everybody. In the case with Valentino, it doesn't work because he doesn't have great eyesight. And I don't know if it doesn't work with Al, but there are a lot of hypnosis screens in the final battle, and he just seemed to be ignoring it.
Now, something that you don't really see many people talking about is how manipulative Sin is. She's like, kind of an asshole. In the sense that she's objectively the most powerful character inside their universe, but instead of, killing everyone outright and getting it over with, she chooses to fuck with everyone for the sake of her own entertainment. For better or for worse, Sin essentially sees everyone as her toys, and she tries to puppet them around in ways that she deems fun or cool. Case in point, Jay. Jay is Sin's ideal toy. She's obedient, and she serves as a glorified punching bag for her throughout episode 8. Sin deliberately chose to skin Tessa alive and to wear her skin just to fuck with Jay even more, and reaffirm the fact that she's not going anywhere anytime soon. God, that is fucking sad. That is That's actually really fucking sad. Jesus Christ, okay. We never outright see much of Jay and Tessa's dynamic on screen, but we can presume that they were pretty close, given how Jay literally stays by Tessa's side until the very end. Now, on the other hand of things, we have V. And V is a broken toy. She was loyal to Sin for quite some time, but eventually she decided to clip her own strings and side with her friends. Not because she has to, but because she wanted to. The main way that Sin tried to control her was via N, who was always her favorite toy to play around with. Threatening, hurting, and manipulating N, that gave Sin a clear shot at always having the upper hand over V. Well, before she died, of course, but you get the point. Control plays a much bigger role in Sin's character than most people let on. We can clearly see in episode 5 that with a literal snap of her fingers, she can instantly control any worker drone around her, including Jay. This would then directly lead to her disassembling them and, well, turning them into her puppets. Every single disassembly drone that was ever made is canonically loyal to Sin, as she's their administrator. This is exactly why Sin wants to hunt down the solver drones, by the way, because they're obviously independent from her, and, she doesn't really like that too much. It's kind of ironic how in the end, she ends up being the one who's controlled 24/7 by, being stuck inside Uzi's tail.
You look great. Have you considered a bow, though?
Both have also experienced a concept of death. With Vox, he experienced it in the most literal way possible, by just straight up dying. Yeah, bro got a TV dropped on his head and electrocuted his entire studio while the TV was stuck to his head, frying his brain. You know the rest. He got reincarnated in hell, and since a sinner's appearance matches the way they died, Vox got a TV for a head. In short, he experienced death in the base definition of experiencing death.
Sin was initially a normal worker drone at some point in time, though it didn't last very long. Tessa's mother eventually discarded her, as she deemed her too incompetent to follow simple orders. This would essentially be the death of Sin, and then her rebirth into the Solver.
Both also somewhat are victims. Vox still did experience manipulation and verbal abuse from Alistair, as we see in the backstory, with Al calling them out on not being friends. With seconds earlier, he called him pal. So Vox did experience what seemed to be some verbal and mental abuse from Alistair. Thankfully not as much as it could have been, but it's still there, and remember, this is what caused Vox to spiral in creating the Vs and making all those deals in the first place.
Sin's entire character is her being a victim, specifically a victim of abuse and constant neglect and mistreatment. In some twisted way, you could even argue that Sin is a little bit justified for the Gala massacre, given the shit that the Elliotts put her through. Not Tessa and Earth though, cause killing them was super not cool. Besides that though, the rest is pretty self-explanatory.
Both have almost in their own respective universes almost destroyed their worlds. Universe or realms. With Vox, his instance of being a world-ending threat was mainly boosted due to, at the time, being the most powerful sinner in hell, not to mention his deal with Alistair. However, majority of his power in this instance is from his reliance and manipulation of other characters. Most notably, Carmilla Carmine's weapon, which not only knocked down Heaven's gates and tore through buildings like they were made of tissue paper, but when it was about to self-destruct, it was going to wipe out half the pentagram with it. And mind you, he still couldn't take Alistair in a 1v1 either. He was relying on A, his pet Shockwave, and B, Carmine's weapon. Him being a realm-ending threat becomes especially real when he's willing to let the detonation of Carmine's weapon go off just so he could kill Alistair. Even so, on his own, he's not just all talk. He was able to take on a weakened state Alistair, and when both were near their full power, Alistair still not at his peak though, they were crushing through buildings and Vox was zipping around at hypersonic speeds. And it was at this point that Vox had all of hell under his thumb. He was overall powerful enough to take on Heaven, not purely by himself, but through pure manipulation, deals, and his status.
Like I said previously, Sin is canonically the most powerful character inside her verse, and it's not really even that close. Her only real competition is Uzi, but most of that can be chalked up to luck and Sin not taking their fight too seriously. If she did take it seriously, then Copper 9 would have gone kablooey a very long time ago. On top of that, and creating every single disassembly drone and having them all under her administration, we've also seen that she's destroyed multiple exoplanets before, which, that's not something that the average Joe can do, so yeah, no, Sin is really powerful.
If it wasn't already clear, Vox is obsessed with Alistair, to the point where it ruined everything for him. His reputation, his connections, and was blindsided by, you guessed it, the deer.
You absolute idiot!
What the fuck is going on? Get back in your chair!
As mentioned before, this is not the first time this has happened. Vox is constantly being rage-baited by Alistair's existence, so it was kind of expected that after Alistair broke his contract with Wordplay, embarrassed him in front of the entire crowd of overlords, I kinda get why he started going haywire. But nevertheless, he still was completely blind until it was too late. And by the time he realized it, he decided that he didn't care about becoming a god anymore, and just wanted to kill Alistair. And circling back to what I said earlier, this is where his mental state really was shown to be broken, and how truly blinded he was by his need for Alistair's destruction.
As long as I wipe that smile off Alistair's fucking face, I don't care what happens.
Sin is essentially a virus, and what do viruses try and do? Well, they try and spread themselves as far as they can, no matter the cost. If she can't control you, then she'll kill you. There is no in-between.
Okay.
Like I just said earlier, Sin was not taking her final fight even remotely seriously, which directly correlates to her loss. If she wasn't as silly as she was, then she would have easily won without even breaking a sweat. But it is what it is, I suppose. To reiterate a crucial part of both characters' archetypes, we have to discuss how manipulation and being calculated plays a very important role in how they're both portrayed. Like I said repeatedly throughout this vid, V and J are the prime examples of Sin's influence and manipulation exemplified to a T. A character who I haven't really talked about too much is everyone's favorite goober, N. Sin and N have a very up and down relationship, to put it lightly. Sin likes N, but N doesn't really like her back.
Hello, Uzi. Hi, N.
This forces Sin to do some very drastic actions. Like wearing a surrogate mother figure's corpse as a Halloween costume. Yeah. On top of that, the sheer lengths that she'll go to harass and go after N and by extension Uzi is pretty absurd. N has tried to do everything and anything in his power to get away from Sin in his previous life, but she'll always come crawling back to him. Which is, like, really not cool, by the way. Like, please don't do that IRL. Like, please don't. It's really not cool. Anyways.
Vox is no stranger to being calculating and manipulative. As stated in previous sections, Vox used angel dust for who even knows how long. It's unclear if Vox was using the V's just for his personal gain, or if he actually cared for them, considering he was willing to sacrifice them at the end. Although I would be willing to bet that he does actually care about them, but I digress. Another prime example would be Carmilla when he used her love of her daughters as pressure on what appeared to be a dead partner. There was also the time he backed Charlie into a corner to prove if redemption was possible, which not only boosted his reputation, but wrecked hers. During the riot, Vox put himself forward as the head, and when both Lucifer and Archangel showed up, which he anticipated thanks to angel dust, he ended up twisting their words and pressuring them into staining their reputation, similar to what he did with Charlie. And then we got the Vox Die song, which went pretty hard.
I'll show you what it means to be the motherfucking queen of hell. 'Cause I'm the Führer, I'm the best. I am the avatar of your consequence. I am your omega. I'm the flood. I am the nightmare you made when you spilled our blood.
He's very good at turning situations that were supposed to give the opponent an advantage, but then instantaneously reflect it. He's also good at manipulating people's weaknesses as well, like when he got the Morningstar family in a chain threat, starting by mimicking Charlie's voice to capture Lucifer, and then using Lucifer as a pawn to draw Charlie in. And from the sounds of his plan to take over heaven, it was pretty sad aside from when someone new got involved, Alistair, but overall Vox is a very thought out schemer and uses his experience in manipulation to better improve his wants. In terms of fighting styles though, it's kind of surprising because in contrast to Vox's manipulation, he's really brute force when it comes to fighting. To be fair, the majority of the fights we've seen with him are with Alistair, but this does say a lot about his past and feelings towards Al. But even the first fight, where there are hints of being calculative, like finding Alistair's shadow to grab him, he still was tearing through buildings and blitzing through power lines to get hits in with Alistair, barely dodging these, especially whenever he decided to strike via his lightning transmutation. So mind you, he's moving at lightning speed, not reacting at lightning, moving as the embodiment of lightning. And this is even more apparent in the final battle when he was once again fighting Alistair in an upgraded form. And after looking at the size comparison of him in his upgraded form versus Alistair, yeah, they were tearing apart the city. In short, I would summarize Vox's fighting style as that one clip of Miguel O'Hara from Spider-Verse.
Sin's confidence and ego is ultimately her undoing, and it really is best exemplified by how she fights in episode 8. She's swinging at them blindly, she's constantly smiling, and she's looking like she's having the time of her life. This is quite contrary to most other villains that we see in Murder Drones, such as Doll and Jay. The stakes couldn't be any possibly higher for them, so imagine that now from Sin's POV. She's trying to control everyone and everything that gets in her way, and all of that can be undone in an instant if she dies. Despite all of that, she continues to be very, very unserious and doesn't seem to care to some extent. It really says a lot about her character, and it does really say a lot about how heartless she is as a whole. Sin is pretty much objectively stronger than Vox, and yeah, nah, it's not really close at all.
Vox, notably, isn't as strong as Sin. Mainly the difference being between destroying multiple planets and Vox struggling to take over Heaven, take Alistair in a 1v1, you get the idea. We've looped back to this so much, but Vox really isn't that powerful on his own, and mainly relies on manipulative tactics to boost his power and reputation. It's implied that Vox was doing okay as his own as an overlord when he first started out, but since then he's been relying more and more on others like the V's, Carmilla for his weapon, and so on.
Power imbalance aside, Sin's biggest flaw, like I mentioned previously, was her ego, and her not taking anything seriously. This is quite different from Vox, cause, it turns out he did end up losing his marbles in Act 3, like Alistair said. Sin is pretty much the polar opposite of Vox in this regard. She only relies on herself for power and no one else. The only other person who she even remotely relied on was Jay, but it wasn't so much about her using her as it was her puppeting her. I wonder what Alistair would say about that.
They also have incredibly different personalities that tie into how they act. Vox is incredibly egotistical and generally charismatic when craving the spotlight, and is very selfish when it comes to making his plans and goals. And if any of his close allies are beginning to question him, chances are he'll be too distracted with Alistair to do anything about it.
Sin couldn't get any further away from Vox's personality if she even tried. Sin is cold, calculated, and occasionally unintentionally hilarious. Instead of wanting to be charismatic and wanting attention, she kind of just brute forces everything and that gets in her way and kills everyone, which, is quite the opposite to what Vox would do. Definitely not someone I'd want to invite to my birthday party, that's for sure.
So what makes these characters terrifying? Well, for Vox, it's his incredibly unstable craving to be perceived as a god, and his unending hunger for the spotlight, with him at his most unstable threatening the two separate realms, heaven and hell. And if not for Alistair showing up, there is a very high chance he would have succeeded. He's also extremely manipulative to the people who work under him. In the case of Angel, he didn't even know he was being under his influence until he outright said it. And don't forget that he is potentially putting implants in his employees, so he knows their every waking moment, with the best example of this being Vox's assistant. My guy looks exactly like an aquatic creature, which we know is Vox's cup of tea, and it looks like he's got some type of tech implanted into the side of his head. Oof, nasty stuff. So chances are, if you're in hell and you've come into contact with this overlord, he knows every single detail about you. So I'll ask again, what makes Vox terrifying? It's his craving for complete and utter control over everyone and everything, while being fed through the perception of being a god.
Sin is terrifying purely because of the fact that both you and her know that she's the strongest one between the both of y'all, and she plays around with that fact quite a lot. She's also terrifying once you realize the fact that, she's destroyed multiple planets before. I don't know about you guys, but that's not something that I would personally want to fight. Yeah, nah, that shit is pretty scary.
Bad job, V.
Well, thank you so much, Yag, for coming on the channel and discussing both Murder Drones and Has-Been. It's been a pleasure, man.
Nah, man, it's been my pleasure just even being here and just yapping with you, cause, I really enjoyed this collab a lot. If you want to do this again sometime, by all means, I'm your guy.
Of course! This has been a blast. I suppose in conclusion, both the characters Vox and Sin are terrifying in their own aspects, and both are undeniably well written in their own respective shows. Again, thank you so much again, Yag, for joining me on this.
Once again, Fern, it's been an absolute pleasure and honor just being brought on, and please do remind me not to piss off Vox or Sin, because, I don't really want to be on their bad side.
Oh, I got you, man. I'll try to make sure you come out unscathed. And thank you guys for sticking through this entire video and listening to us talking about these guys. We really appreciate it, and for now, I'll see you in the next video. Later!